Welcome to my series of short videos. Our main topic today is we're headed to Fort Simcoe. So remember to click your seatbelt, drink a big glass of water, and hold on tight for this nice, slow ride. We're taking the road less traveled for our second attempt to Fort Simcoe. Instead of taking the paved road around the hills, we opted for the gravel road over the hills. A group of crows may be called a murder, but a flock of ravens is called an unkindness. And we have Mount Adams to the west. I like to collect images of unusual buildings in case I want to build them in the future. Today we finally made it to Fort Simcoe. You can see the parking lot. There's nobody else here. We're way at the end of this dead-end road. This is one of the very few pre-Civil War forts that still exist in the West. It was opened in 1856, and then in 1859 they turned it over to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and then eventually turned over to the Yakama Nations. And it is also a school for the Indian children up until 1922. This is one of many of the buildings that was reconstructed, and these blockhouses were made with pine logs, pyramid roofs, and dovetail joints. The blockhouses are built at the four corners of the fort instead of putting walls up, and that way they could protect their area here. The fort is built on 196 acres. When we came across these grave trail signs, I thought, okay, they'll take us out to the cemetery because there's obviously more than 100 years of history out here. But no, there wasn't. There were just two graves for some soldiers. Here's one of them. This guy, he came out here, lived for 1 month, got sick, and then died. And so they felt they should go ahead and rebuild his marker in 1966 and preserve this gravesite. What I expected to see was somebody from the 40 years of the school operating buried here. A teacher, a custodian, maybe even a student, but nothing. I have to admit, I didn't go look at the other grave. I just assumed it was another soldier because it was set up the same way. This is obviously newer construction. Yep, this barracks is a replica of one of the 4 original barracks that were built at the fort during the military era. It was built by the Fort Simcoe Jobs Corps. The last of the original barracks building burned down in 1949. The original barracks building was made of hewed logs that came from the hills west of the fort up to the soldiers who slept in bunk beds stacked 2 to 3 high. Beds were made of rough lumber, rope for springs, and straw or grass for the mattress. Personal possessions were kept in footlockers or duffel bags. Each barracks had 2-sided fireplace located near the center of the building, which was used for cooking and heat, and the original fireplace brick was handmade at the fort. Let's see the 2-sided fireplace. Old jail. From 1859 to 1922, the fort was used as the Indian Agency headquarters. In 1910, this structure was built and used as the agency jail. It was built using beams from Company C Barracks, which stood east of here. Company C Barracks was torn down in 1909. Beware of bears. Going out of the oak grove up into the sagebrush flats to see the second blockhouse. Most of the conflicts happened in the year 1855, a year before the fort was built, so these blockhouses were really never needed. With over 350 soldiers, lieutenants, and captains, they weren't really worried about being attacked. The holes around the top there are called rifle portholes. Well, 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 what do we have here? This is one of the houses that was locked up. You couldn't go in. I love this old pitted wavy glass. We've got this tiny little door here, this little crooked door here. All these beautiful white buildings were also reconstructed. What I've summarized from reading this is the house is all completely restored like it was in 1858, including the color inside, the furniture, all the accessories, and the whole property was reconstructed based on the sketch right there at the top. Another little tiny door. Hey, if you see any ghosts in my video, I'd appreciate if you leave it in the comments, along with a like and a follow. Thank you. This guardhouse was moved over to a city not too far from here called White Swan, and later on it was used as a jail there, and then later on they moved it back here for the historical site. This wooden plank is the remains of a structure built many years ago. It was attached to the trunk of this oak tree. Over time, the tree was attempted to heal its wounds. This is a natural occurrence as the bark attempts to cover the scar to prevent insects and disease from penetrating. In 1956, Washington State leased this land from the Yakama Nations to preserve this historic park for a 99-year lease. So you can see the lines in the grass of where the buildings used to be. And unlike how they replaced many other buildings around here, they did not here. What's amazing is the size of these oak trees, and there is definitely a whole grove of them all throughout this area. This place got more jails and guardhouses than a whole damn city. Bees love all this clover. Look at that. This is a great place for bees. The bee is your friend. Don't swat at him or make him mad. Just let him go about his way. By the 1850s, conflicts arose between the Indians and the newly arrived American and European miners and settlers. In response to these problems, the Army built Fort Simcoe at this site. Construction began in August 1856, and by its completion, the buildings surrounded the 420-foot square parade ground. The fort served as an advanced post of the 9th Infantry Regiment until 1859, when it was turned over to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Indian Agency provided services to the Indian reservation, from reading and writing to trade skills. During this period, some of the fort buildings were removed while the other agency structures were constructed. In 1923, the Indian Agency moved to Toppenish, and although the fort was abandoned, efforts soon began to preserve it. Restoration projects by the Indian Civilian Conservation Corps crew in the 1930s saved some of the fort structures. In 1953, the land was leased to the Washington State Parks and Recreation Commission. 9 of the original buildings have been restored or constructed. As I was finishing my video, I looked up to find out the year this boarding school burnt down, which it said 1923. But it also started to talk about the dark history of cultural genocide. To summarize my experience at Fort Simcoe, actually it turned out really sad, especially after leaving the grave trails, when I realized there were so many generations of history that were not written here and that were ignored. And of course, a little bit of random videos like the nuclear towers by Aberdeen, Washington, this really cool contrail with some cool designs in it, and a runaway truck ramp on Highway 12. Another adventure done, so unclick your seatbelt, drink another big glass of water, and head outside and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Bye.